Okay, so now for Locusta, and she is our 4-star limited that's also on the Draco banner. I think a lot of people were surprised by Locusta because she is not a character from Arcade. She has not been talked about to my knowledge, nor was she released over there. So she is a wholly new unit here in mobile, which I think has a lot of other people going like, what? Maybe because we all expected the Arcade units, some people have kind of gotten a little angry about that. And again, I totally understand if you are. I just understand as well what the devs are maybe trying to do with Locusta. And again, I'm not going to talk about her lore, even though we do know who she is in history. So, taking a look at her kit here, she's got almost 9k attack. 9k is typically the good attack value that I like to see. Anything above that for a 4-star. The one knock I'll have against this is don't forget that she is an assassin, so she's already going to have a little bit of a malice for that towards her damage capability. So not quite reaching 9k is a little oof, but hey, it is what it is, and I do think that Locusta will make up for it with what she has in her deck. Her HP value actually could be a little bit better, I would think, as well, because it's only 11k, so it's not too beefy either here, but it is what it is. Now, looking at her attributes here, she is man attribute. She has 104 star absorption and 24.2 star gen. And again, has a 0.47 in P-charge attack. Now, you might be thinking, that is really low, and you would be right. But again, I think the proof is in the pudding here. So she actually has a little bit slightly higher than average in P-charge defense there of 4% whenever she gets hit. And she has a very high death rate of nearly 50%. So do not try to go toe-to-toe with people that actually have death proc as an enemy, because, yeah, you're going to probably get your servant procced quite a bit. And then again, she is chaotic balanced, and the balanced one there is rather weird because, again, it's not lawful or anything like that. It's not evil or anything. It's just square in the middle. And then she is female, hominide, humanoid, Roman, servant, and weak to enemy elish. So not a huge laundry list of traits, but still really good. And again, looking at the deck here, she has triple arts. She is a single target arts assassin. So that is something that I think really just works in her favor. It's going to be very easy to form arts chains with her as a result of that. Doubly so if you're using her with devoted arts supports. So I think having triple arts as a deck, it feels like it's been quite a bit since we've actually seen like a low star unit with this, but definitely strong. So again, everything here is average with only the quick card being above average, but still a 3-hit arts card, definitely solid there. Looking at the first skill here, she has Inflict poisons for 5 turns to all enemies. The poison damage is 1,000 per tick. And then it increase own arts performance for 3 turns of 30%. So again, that's going to help out the NP gain issue. That's also going to bolster damage there. So definitely nice in that regard. It's going to even help card performance as well. And then increase NP gen rate for 3 turns by 20%. So yet another thing already right here just on the first skill that's helping combat that really low NP gain rate. So this is kind of why I say don't judge the book by its cover. Don't just look at the raw stat, because often the rest of the kit ends up sort of balancing it out. Again, all of that on a 6-turn cooldown. Her second skill here grants herself gut status 1 time 3 turns of up to 2000 HP and reduce her own damage taken for 3 turns by 500. So not quite Draco's damage cut there, but still 3 turns at 500 is not too shabby. Now, looking at the final part about this skill is the really truly interesting part. So she grants self-poison recovery buff for 5 turns. And what this means is that it converts her own poison damage into healing. Well, that's weird because if you already saw the first skill there, she applies poison to the enemies. So hold that in the back of your mind for right now. Her third skill here charges the party's NP gauge by 20%. It also grants a self-on-attack activate debuff for 3 attacks, 3 turns. That debuff inflicts poison with 500 damage for 3 turns to an enemy when normal attacking. So for 3 attacks, you can inflict 3 stacks of poison, basically. So, like, again, each attack will do 1 stack. So up to a maximum of 3 right there. And that is why that has the limitation, is so that you cannot card lock this. But the latter part of the skill here has a 500% chance to inflict poison with 1000 damage for 5 turns to self as a demerit. But this is taking a demerit and turning it into a strength from the second skill. So that 1000 damage over 5 turns instead becomes 1000 healing over 5 turns for herself. So it turns a dot into a hot. Basically, it takes the demerit, flips it upside down, turns it into a buff. That's really actually pretty nice. I actually thought that was really creative of them, and I actually liked the way they did that. So again, quite strong there. But the big thing you actually will want to pay attention to is going to be, again, the ability to stack poison with her damage. Now, her passive skills here include Presence Concealment B for critical star generation rate, Mental Pollution Poison D that increases her own poison debuff success rate by 20%. That's going to be nice because you're not going to want those poisons to whiff. So having that extra chance to land it, really good. And then increase own mental debuff resistance by 10%, which we just talked about on the Draco video. Now, again, the one thing I want to point out is this is just 3 attacks, okay? So I don't remember, but I don't believe that applies to the Noble Phantasm. But it doesn't specifically say, so it might. Again, if anyone in chat knows, feel free to let me know. That's one of the things I haven't actually looked into yet. But again, she has extra attack performance and mana loading as her first 2 pins. We're pretty used to that. I think the mana loading is going to be the one you're going to want to go with. Certainly, when it says something like attack, then an extra attack could actually proc the poison proc. But again, since it's limited to 3 times, we don't really care which cards do it as long as we get enough attacks to actually do it. But again, then we get to the third skill here, and it's anti-saber attack damage aptitude. This one's not going to be that useful. I don't really see this being worth your coins as of right now. So my focus would be to tell you guys to go after the mana loading first and foremost. Now, as we get to the Noble Phantasm, again, you guys can see she is single target for hit arts. She basically inflicts poison with 500 damage to for 5 turns to 1 enemy activating first. Then she deals damage to 1 enemy, and then she deals additional damage basically to enemies that have poison status. And this is going to be functionally super effective. So again, it is basically going to be a number of stack modifier, just like Summer Kiara had, where the amount of debuff stacks on the enemy scales her NP. Same thing here. The amount of poison stacks on the enemy will scale your NP by 15% for each number that you have. Really, really, really nice in that regard. So, again, this does mean that the more you can card an enemy before you fire off her Noble Phantasm, with that third trait active, the more stacks you're going to have and the more damage you're going to do to them. Again, after damage goes out, then she also inflicts a toxic status for 5 turns to them, which increases poison damage on them by 1000. So if you remember, she basically has a whole bunch of poisons here that deal 500 damage. And then she also has the stack from her first skill that deals 1000. So this will double each of those. Instead, the third skill will go to dealing 1000 damage per, and the first skill will go to dealing 2000 damage. So that can definitely add up fairly quickly. I think the big issue is going to be, can you get the cooldowns off on this to get back to it rather fast, so that you can keep reapplying those poisons and kind of keep that ball rolling for damage purposes. But with regards to damage output, this does mean that she has a theoretical maximum, assuming you're not doing some sort of crazy shenanigans, of 5 stacks on an enemy, because you can get 1 from, again, the, like, well, I guess it can go upward. It really just depends, right? You can get 1 from the first skill. You can get up to 3 from the third skill. And then you can get 1 for every NP that you put on the target. So that's where I'm getting the 5 from. But in theory, if you're looping against the same target, this could go up even more. So by a 3rd turn, for instance, you could basically have had at that point, essentially, you know, 7 stacks. So it is possible, but it would require you to be hitting the same unit. Again, just really depends on what you're going to try to do in order to try and reduce cooldowns and get back to those skills in time. But certainly I think it's much more reasonable to maybe look at it from a 2-stack standpoint, where maybe you have the first skill and then the infliction of the poison from just the NP. Or even a standpoint where you go, hey, maybe I have the first skill and its singular stack, the NP and its singular stack, and maybe I pre-card with 2 attacks. So if you do that, then you would have basically 4 stacks at that point. And that kind of makes sense as well. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Then her overcharge effect on her NP is that it's going to increase her own arts performance activating first for 1 turn by 10%. Not huge, but again, it's arts, so it's even more NP gain, even more damage. Definitely nice for her to have. So really, really solid there in that regard. Now, again, I think the big concern that people are going to have with both her and, like I said earlier, Draco is going to be that refund number. She should be decently okay, doubly so as a single target where you know you're probably going to be trying to use those cards. So the bigger issue is going to be, again, like, are you actually killing the enemy, or do you actually have break bars and stuff that you can maybe card against? So that is going to be your concern there. But taking a look at the damage list here and kind of talking about that, you guys can see that Locusta is out here basically at NP1 at 33.5k. That's not the greatest, but this is without basically the poison stacks here really coming too much into play. So looking at this is a calculation of what she would have at NP1 if you had 4 or 5 stacks even on the same target. So certainly you guys can see a little bit of mobility there. It's not huge, but I believe that's because this number probably already includes the singular stack from her NP as well as from her skill. So this one probably is a calculation that already includes 2 stacks. But again, I would have to actually look to make sure. Still, again, that definitely means she has a little bit of upwards mobility, and if you manage to roll heavily on Draco's banner, or you just really like her, and you get more copies, certainly you're looking at a lot more robust numbers there. And again, remember, these are all just neutral, so it's not considering class advantage or anything like that. So definitely, I think she will be a fairly solid unit, even though she doesn't immediately show up at the top of this list. But again, let me know what you guys think about Locusta and whether or not you're happy with having her as a new unit in the game versus maybe someone else from Arcade.